hopefully hit saves where they can see us. I haven't gotten this right yet, but this will be recorded.
Yes.
Um, all right, cool. Welcome everybody. Yeah, thanks for being here. Scott and I were talking recently, and we both just felt this was like a really important conversation to have. And plant medicine is something that carries a lot of taboo in our culture, and it usually only pops up in the headlines or like some wildly out of context story, like seeing Aaron Rodgers in a podcast or something like that, and it leaves out all of the depth, the tradition, and like the real transformational potential like of this work. And I think about it in the sense of like we're living in this like pretty serious meta crisis, and there's all these overlapping challenges occurring at the same time. Yet we as humans today have more access than ever to like all of these modalities, medicines, traditions, psychotechnologies, like even science that can help us meet these challenges to transform ourselves. So ayahuasca, in my opinion, and Scott probably agrees, is one of these tools that's just incredibly potent to support us in doing that. It's beautifully supported to help us explore these bigger questions about who we are, what it means to be human, and how we really grow and heal while we're here. So tonight we're going to talk about what ayahuasca is, the traditions it comes from, why it can be such a powerful framework for transformation, and why integration, which is like the work that takes place after the ceremony, is just as important as the ceremony itself. And we'll probably also touch on some other medicines. I've got some curiosities about some other medicines, and I know other people usually do, um, and practices that make sense. But the plan is Scott and I are going to like have a conversation between the two of us for about 30 minutes, and then we'd love to open it up for like a community discussion. So this is a space for you to bring your perspective. It matters if you've got something to share from your experience with it, or a hesitation about it, or a skepticism or confusion, whatever it is, like bring it so we can evolve in community together. Um, yeah, that's the plan. So with that being said, yeah, Scott, I'd love to just like hand it over to you for a moment. Maybe just introduce yourself, and then I can kind of like take us from there.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you all for joining on this talk. So, yeah, a little bit about me, real briefly. I started my work with ayahuasca in 2013. I came down for a retreat, and I feel like a lot of people, similar to a lot of people, looking for a bit of direction and guidance. I was at a stage in my life where I had just come back from working in Asia for about 11 years in corporate. Knew I didn't want to go back to that, and in some, sense, feeling a bit lost as to what my life purpose was, and also wanting to go a bit more into my adoption. Um, and that was really my first start and introduction of working with this really incredible medicine. And after that first retreat, I came back to the US for about 6 months, integrated. And even during that retreat, I knew I wanted to come back and continue just my own work and healing and growth um, with the medicine. So, really, from 2014, beginning of 2014, is where I really dove into working with this medicine. I went back to the same center that I did my first retreat at. Uh, Ended up spending about 7 months there. By the end of that time, they asked if I was interested in coming on board as to start training into the space. I went back home for another 2 months to close everything down, and then for the next 4.5 years, ended up working at this center in the middle of the Amazon, living in the jungle, and really immersing myself within the Shipibo with Shipibo healers that work with the medicine, and that is the specific tradition that I worked within and know the most about. And then, yeah, after leaving that center, I moved to Costa Rica to help set up another center for about 2 years, and at that point was ready to come back to Peru and really, I'd say, lock in and wanting to continue my own personal journey and growth with the medicine, as well as my apprenticeship. So really since beginning of 2020, I've been back in Peru and have been running very small retreats here.
Mm.
So yeah, in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, and like you didn't add this piece, but like you came from a very like normal path in our Western society. Like you were in the corporate track, and so I just want to name that because I think it's such a cool um, aspect of like your commitment to the medicine and this work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe that's a nice way to kind of dovetail into the this overarching theme of the stigma that's around, I'd say,
Mm.
plant medicine in general, as well as different modalities of healing or personal growth. And I know that there's a lot out there, and it can at times come across as being a bit new agey, or to use a I guess a colloquial expression like woo wooey. And what I feel is important is that this work, one, it's grounded and approached with the respect and um, the we are working with serious components of the human persona, the identity, and as well as the mind. Um, that it's more than just, I think, what often is put out in the general public around the visions or what people see in ceremony. Oftentimes you'll hear people talk about the um, the more sensational aspects that can surface within a ceremony, which might be aliens or the machine elves within the DMT world. And while those make great stories, I feel like it glosses over the true essence of what this work really is, which is this connection back to self in a very authentic manner, and also being able to gain a broader awareness of some of the patterns that may have been created in life that are now causing unnecessary pain and suffering or obstacles, which is oftentimes why people feel like they're stuck or they keep running back into um, these challenges in their life. So yeah, I definitely had heard about all of these stories of like, oh, you might see aliens or you might see machine elves, and a lot of the sensational aspects of working with ayahuasca. And really what my intention in coming to do this work for myself initially was more on those deeper layers. And I'd say there are ultimately a lot of people that come into this work for whatever reason do start to hit um, those points of really self exploration, is maybe a better way to put it at some point. And yeah, it's not uncommon to hear those more more sensational stories, but that's really not what this work is about.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when you were sharing it, it reminded me of like my experience of recognizing the profound intelligence of the plant, of its like, and when I say profound intelligence, like it's like it was like its knowing of what needed to be healed inside of my body, like in a very somatic way, which I had no connection to really, like feeling my body, like I live in this thing. But it brings you into your body in a really visceral way as well. Yeah, so maybe like from there, like what the hell is ayahuasca?
Okay. Okay. So I think maybe to start off with, uh, to just create a bit of clarity, under the umbrella of ayahuasca, which is a medicine, a tea that is used throughout the Amazon. So countries of Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Peru. Um, there are multiple traditions that work with these two plants, and there is an ayahuasca vine that grows, and then there's the chacruna plant that actually has the DMT um, within it. So the combination of these two plants typically are what constitute the brew known as ayahuasca. So there's an ayahuasca vine, and then there's the chacruna plant, which contains the DMT, which opens up the visionary space. So without getting too much into the weeds of the science behind and the pharmacology of these two plants and how they have an impact on the body in this talk, maybe just to first understand that when people are talking about ayahuasca, it's really important to understand like what is the tradition that they are working with this medicine in. So there are countless indigenous traditions that work with this medicine. The tradition that we'll be talking about mostly today is the Shipibo tradition, which is the tradition that I've been really only working with since I first started this work. And within their cosmology and their tradition of working with plant medicine, ayahuasca is used as that. It is medicine. It's not used in a shamanic sense, although there are shamanic components to how they work, or at least how Westerners would perceive their work to be done. So it's what I've seen
Scott, can you
happen.
draw that distinction out, like like for someone who's like, what the hell is shamanism versus medicine?
So this is how I personally would
Mm.
define shamanism: is that it's more, there's a larger emphasis on a spiritual and in some aspects religious kind of overtones
Mm.
within the mystical. And without a doubt, there are those components within the Shipibo tradition. However, it's not the primary. Even the healers, the curanderos that are in the space, view themselves as doctors, plant doctors. They don't view themselves as gurus, which I feel at times shamans can also carry a connotation of some type of guru, or someone who has attained a certain level of enlightenment. And quite a few of the healers that I've met through my time, they're very much rooted in their humanity. They're very fallible. They don't try and hide that for the most part. They're very aware that they have access through training and knowledge of how to work with these plants and the energetics that come into play in that ceremony space. But I really don't see them placing themselves on a pedestal as a healer of all things. Although the work that how this plant and this medicine is used is very much a holistic approach to healing. So it's mind, body, soul, as well as the energetics that encompass all of those parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that makes me think about Ken Wilber has a really nice framework that has like got me really intrigued about why ayahuasca. It's like, oh wow, this makes so much sense. Like all the layers that ayahuasca can work at, it kind of contributes to what he talks about is like growing up, which is like how do we actually mature through like our psychological stages of development, beyond just like this ego-centered perspective, being able to integrate and hold bigger perspectives, and then cleaning up. So like, how do we actually look at our shadows, heal these unconscious wounds and patterns and parts of ourselves that need to be integrated, and then like from there showing up. So like having the courage to go like be of service and contribute, and then opening up, expanding our emotional and relational capacity. And it's like, oh yeah, of course. Like I'll never forget. And after our first week in ceremony, like being able to stand up, like with my heart swelling and hugging Tony, and like tears coming down my eyes. And it's like that lands there. And then the last piece is he talks about is waking up being a critical. All of these stages that I just named are aspects of like a true wholeness, like a real path of individuation. And when one is missing, like you find it all the time with someone who's like has awakening, but they're like on their pedestal causing harm. And that's where like this aspect of like meeting all these buckets. And I think ayahuasca can really bridge like for wherever you're at, whatever you're navigating, like it can meet you in each of those spaces.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, maybe like I'd love to hear like how you think about, so there's all these centers now, right? There's all these different ways somebody could go work with the medicine, but like maybe talk a little bit about just how important it is and why it's so important to create like this, to make sure you have this safe container. There's a real sense of trust and a professionalism also.
Um, yeah. So there are hundreds of different ways to work with this medicine. And I would offer that there's no correct way of doing it. I definitely have my own preferences of what resonates and speaks to me. And for someone who's brand new and coming into, the possibility of sitting in a retreat with this medicine, what I would invite them to really do, and you touched on this already, is to start cultivating this sense of the felt sense. Does it feel like it's the right space for me to sit in, rather than trying to make that decision from the mind? Does it fit within the time constraints that I have to take off from work? Does it fit within, the calendar? Does it fit, with all of these other surface level constraints that oftentimes people are entering into, retreats with, and really taking a step back, taking a beat, and checking in. Does this space feel like it's the right place for me to be doing this work? The reason for that is, until someone actually sits in their first ceremony, a lot of what their maybe understanding or awareness of this medicine is purely from a mental or intellectual place. And there's nothing wrong with that. But similar to kind of what you were touching on earlier, this is a very personalized journey that a person is going to be entering into, which is really beautiful. There's something quite amazing and magical in that aspect. The second component is that I feel a center that is providing support in a healthy and in a manner that is, hopefully honoring the tradition that they're working with, recognizes what are the constraints or maybe the expectations that someone is coming into this work with. Around that could be safety, that could be dosage, just a myriad of things. So engaging with whatever center that you're going to be sitting with is really important. Asking, good questions. There are no bad questions, especially doing this work. At the foundation that I try and share with people that are coming to sit with me for the first time is letting them, informing them that trust is a really big component to this work. And I can't ask for that. What I can hopefully try and convey to them is, through our conversations, is the space in which they'll be entering will be held in a way that is supportive to them, but not doing the work for them. And that in and of itself can be very challenging for some people who are accustomed to, I'd say, a modern mindset, which is, I have a problem, tell me what to do to fix it. And a lot of this is self-discovery. And that can be really, really challenging for people to take that step forward, and in a way reclaiming that agency. But there is, on that other side of that coin, is something quite beautiful in witnessing someone who starts to take accountability for self, starts to recognize ways in which they've shown up where maybe they are, through behavior patterns or through mental patterns, turning that agency back over to others, right? And not in a selfish way, right? Reclaiming it, but recognizing that there is a place for boundaries. And what within the Shipibo tradition, what I love about it is no one component is going to heal a person in and of itself. So that means the medicine, just drinking the medicine, is not going to fix anyone's, problems that they may perceive. The healer in and of themselves is not going to fix the individual. And the individual, if they're unwilling or they're not ready to participate in that process, they have to show up in order for, I'd say, this process to really move in that direction of holistic healing. So all three components are important within this work. And I love that because it requires, it is co-created. Everything within a retreat format that I've been a part of in the past as well as now is an awareness that all of these components in and of themselves are important to the whole and what that person's process, and how that person's process unfolds.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if this feels true for you, but the what I was thinking as you were speaking was like it doesn't fix or heal, like it doesn't fix anything, but it can really like create the conditions for us to like understand what's happening, and maybe even like create the space, nervous system energetically, for us to like have some room to start to like take the next step, whatever that might be, in our own journey, and it can be totally different.
Yeah, I think this comes back into as well, maybe starting to reframe um, the relationship to certain words. So
Yeah,
we,
yeah,
I don't think I've been in any retreat setting where we talk about curing people because that's really not the aim. It's healing, definitely, you
yeah,
know. And like with healing, there is that process where it does take time for certain wounds, emotional wounds or traumas, first to be fully seen, right? In a way without judgment or guilt, or regret, or blame,
mm,
really seeing what is that thing that has potentially had ripple effects
mm,
from the point that I experienced it throughout my life with other instances, possibly adding and compounding the intensity of it.
yeah,
And then coming into a space where can I see the totality of it? What were the lessons I was able to take away from it? How did this actual trauma potentially teach me something,
yeah,
right? And in that process, for everyone, I would offer goes through this in their own unique way because everyone's trauma is uniquely their own, right?
yeah,
And I'm not talking trauma from this standpoint of scalability, like someone in a car accident versus
yeah,
someone who,
yeah.
lost a dog, right? Within the cosmology of this tradition of the Shipibo tradition, it's all equal, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say like as humans, like
Yeah,
it's impossible to develop and not have developmental trauma. Like,
exactly.
yeah, it's we all have aspects of our development.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is wounded. Yeah, and like I don't even know if this there's like healing like from a physical energetic perspective, maybe more so even on like the physical side of things, right? But then like the other healing can also seem like kind of like a taboo word or maybe woo too for people, but it's like the what's helped me is like to heal is to like be able to truly be able to land in a space where we can love the parts of ourselves, like to really hold and love aspects of ourselves that we haven't been able to hold or see, and and like that's the work,
yeah,
and the plant opens that up to like create that.
yeah. And this actually leads, without jumping too far ahead, into this word integration, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
has become much more prominent within the field of this work, because as you know, and I'm sure Tony, Charles, and Evram can attest to in their own journey, the integration is really their work. And what does that actually mean to fully integrate? What that process was like in ceremony or what came up in ceremony. And the best way that I've been able to understand it for myself is integration is that point in time where if I've integrated something, I no longer consciously need to think about showing up and choosing a different way of being than what the pattern
mm,
that I'm accustomed to
mm,
has been,
yeah,
right? So when when I'm able to just be this other, show up in a way that is not reactionary
mm,
without consciously thinking about it, right? That is integration. That's full integration for me. So
yeah, and it really is like, I mean, that it is our journey. Like it's not like something that like we complete.
yeah,
Um, there may be aspects that we integrate and then we move on to the next thing that needs to be integrated. But we met in 2020, and that was the first time I sat, and I'm still integrating like this work of like my body and nervous system, and like it's still like the heart of my work. And I'm still realizing like, wow, I'm not actually like really leaning into what like is being um, surfacing on a consistent and daily basis.
yeah,
Yeah, and like the piece I'll say there too is like we have I had an opinion coming into this call where I was going to be like, I had like a strong opinion about before you go sit with plant medicine, you've got to like have these things lined up. Like you got to kind of like, but I kind of like at the end of the day, like if you feel called to the medicine, you can trust that and like have the structures in the back end to support your process. Because I went in and like I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I didn't really know what the hell the medicine was. I listened to a podcast and was like, cool, sign me up, man. But I was feeling like incredibly stuck, disconnected from purpose, and I did feel a call to just go. I don't know why. I just it was wild. But I did have there's a few things I'll say that were helpful. Like I had created a relationship with my breath. So I had some facility with my breath that I think is critical to being able to navigate our experience and to like down regulate in the space and find ourselves. Um, yeah, to be able to really find ourselves. And then at the same sense, like having a capacity to use your breath, to find your body, and to recognize that you can actually navigate whatever experience you're in. And that's why it's so important to have facilitators like yourself that can like be there to guide you into that process when you're feeling lost, when it feels like it's too much, and it's like we actually have everything within us to navigate our experience and what's coming our way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this touches on maybe, Charles and Tony and Evram at a later point can like share their if they're open to it, like sharing part of their experience. But coming into this medicine, I sense that a lot of the fear oftentimes coming into this work is the idea of losing control and what does that actually mean,
Yeah.
and what is the process going to be like, and just all of the different I guess ideas of what this process is, and similar to what you were saying, like not knowing is actually something quite beautiful because
Mm.
we can have an idea based off of others experiences or what we've read or heard about, but until I actually sat in my first ceremony, it was all again very much an ideation or an idea, right?
Yeah.
And that experiential process is so profound because what I've tried to share with family as well as guests is when something now lands for me, it's felt, it's almost a full body kind of somatic feedback as a register of like, this is right, or, this is not the right choice for me to maybe do. And
Yeah.
it's really interesting to reconnect to that. And there's something that's quite fascinating within modern society where there is, I'd say, a disconnection from these parts of ourselves,
Yeah.
like that we do have all of the answers, within us. And reconnecting to that is a really beautiful, but, can be a very challenging process.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Like I think about we're a society that's very good at like experience distant.
Yeah.
Like what's next? What do I got to think about, worry about, plan for the future, but not experience near, which ayahuasca brings you right into the heart of, which is like, what is this experience of being me?
Yeah.
Like really, what are the parts of me that are here, speaking, available, felt, whatever it might be, and then how do you actually work with that and be with that and navigate that and experience it, like really experience it. Um, yeah, so we'll kind of transition to opening it up. But I want to say something to that point because like I'll often this will come up in conversation, as it does with people, and like the first thing everyone always says is like, "Oh man, I would love it. Sounds awesome, but like, no way can I lose control. Like even if I smoke a puff of weed, like I lose my mind." And it's like I like honor everyone's experience, and I'm like I get it, and it's like but that's like what it's calling you into is to like really face that fear of like this idea that you have control of what exactly, and and it opens that whole door to what I think is like a more um, spiritual perspective of like understanding reality from your perspective, to like have a perspective on what reality is.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to. Yeah, no, cool. This is good. I think we covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. Um, Yeah, I'd love to open it up. Like, what's even just to start, like, what's from what we were talking about, what's feeling alive in you guys? What feels important? Um, and you could, hit on any realm of the conversation, the taboo piece, the work, the experiences.
Yo, Full Hopper is the guy like not on camera.
Yeah,
So
thanks, man.
like lead by participation, not by camera,
I
maybe.
love it, man.
So I like the piece that I feel is like super interesting to me is the beauty in letting go of control. Like that's just not no, I don't have much in the way of opportunity to do that in my normal day to day.
Hmm.
And kind of creating like the environment that that then creates is like what I'm most interested in or like connects with kind of something that I would love to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for naming that. And Scott mentioned it earlier when you said like the disconnect from self. And I think that's like a culturally, there aren't spaces that invite you into this sacred, the ritual of the medicine, the ceremonial aspect of it. It just invites you into an experience that is so outside of the norm. It has you see things from a different perspective. But yeah, like,
Yeah, and I feel like there's something to add here, to just provide a bit of context and clarity, hopefully, that although ayahuasca is labeled as a psychedelic, it is it does have psychedelic characteristics. However, it's not a disassociative state that within the tradition I work within that we're actually aiming to get people to. We don't want them to be blasted into the 108th dimension, where they're basically uncommunicative, in the ceremony space. What we're looking for is this opening or this expansion. We talk about it quite a bit in the retreats, being energetically open, and it's really again hard to understand until a person experiences it. And what the best way I can describe it is where all of your senses are extremely heightened in a way that you're able to start to connect to parts of self in a very unadulterated way. And that's why oftentimes the emotions, it can be like riding waves of emotions from base emotions of anger, sadness, guilt, shame, frustration, to lighter emotions of joy, compassion, love. And Kevin, to kind of getting back to what you're saying it and not feeling like you have those spaces to open up into, it's not letting go of control maybe in the way that we would register it in day-to-day life. It's really opening up, I would say, into vulnerability without an attachment to an expected outcome, if that makes sense. So it's letting go of the attachment that A will lead to B will lead to C. It's like letting all of the possibilities be seen and be open to whatever needs to come in will come in. It's hard to fully um, relate to somebody that until they come into this space. But that losing control doesn't mean like losing your mind by
yeah.
any means. If anything, we're looking for a very rooted and grounded like connection to self on a very deep level, with while at the same time having access to the full spectrum of the human emotional range,
Mm.
and also and this is where we talk about bringing alignment with the mind. The mind is, it's important, it serves a purpose, and it's a great tool, but it's like anything. When there's an overload on one sensory input for information, it kind of short circuits and overrides everything else. And what we're looking for is balance between you know mental intelligence, the intellectual intelligence, the heart intelligence, gut intelligence. And when all of those things are in alignment, it really is amazing to see how things just naturally flow in life, because one is not trying to overpower the other.
Mm. Yeah.
That makes
Yeah,
sense. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, you bet.
Scott, that raises something for me around a little bit of loss of control, but in my experience, it was like a dream state, but I could have a real conscious discussion with myself. I could ask the medicine questions and hear and listen to the answers. And I went down to Peru with like really set intentions. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this, and the medicine is going to help me find a job. I'm going to stop drinking. It's going to deal with the trauma, like military trauma, and then I'll be healed. But really, it was more of like holding up that inner mirror in my brain to expose, like asking myself, well, like why do you need to do these things? Like it was a layer above, the world that we live in that's so busy and it's just like solve problems, move on. That it was like, well, why? Why? What do you really want to get out of, your own brain? And it was like a layer deeper for me, that was really profound. And then it was like if I had to go to the bathroom or get up, I could get up and move around, and then it was like, all right, let me lay down and get back into this, and then drop back in and ask questions and have a thoughtful, thought provoking and really valuable conversation with my own brain. It was or consciousness. Um, so yeah, the medicine will bring out what you need, not what you want it to bring out.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's beautiful because in speaking with quite a few of the healers I've worked with over, you know, close to, 12 years of being within the medicine space, they do, there's an expression, right? It's Spanish, but it's like Spanish for people, but it's todo shinan. So everything is mind. And I, it is pretty fascinating that over this period of time, it's really reconciled and changed the relationship that I actually have with my own mind. And seeing how at times it wants to go in a direction that is, either out of alignment or it's wanting to go back into these patterns of, whether it's, my traumas or my fears of, acceptance or abandonment, aspects of scarcity, and it wants to replay these stories. And over time, I feel like I've gotten more awareness, really more than anything, around that in certain moments when it tries to go in those directions or into those spaces, I do have more agency in, like, bringing it back. There are times where I'll indulge myself and stay in it a bit longer than maybe I I would like to, but it's it is a lot of mental training. Like, learning, the way I perceive it is what I've been doing, and what a lot of people start to do with this work is learning to create a relationship with the mind that it works with you, not against you. And so even being aware of like all of those small, and they seem very insignificant, but the number of times initially where I would catch myself, I'd leave my keys in my car, and I might lock the doors, and how quickly that first thought that came in would be like, I'm stupid. I locked myself out of my car, right? That was the first thought. Why? And actually, like, giving that some space, like, what part of me is actually saying that? And is that true? And just starting to catch these very subtle mental programs or false beliefs that I'd created and held on to, and they seem insignificant on the surface, but repeated enough, they can become true, or I can choose for them to become true. So yeah, understanding the mind is really beautiful. I'm glad you had that, Chuck.
Yeah, and Chuck, there's like the thing you named too, like solving a problem, and that's like the fundamental context of like the Western mind. Like everything is a problem to be solved. It's like even shifting out of that context, which is like our humanity is not a problem to be solved. It's like this poetic there's truth, there's goodness, there's beauty to it, and it's like, what if we shifted to that, and what arises from that place? And it's like, yeah, there's so much gold even shifting on it, but we don't see that until we like going into the medicine trying to fix something, and then we realize it, and it's like, oh shit, there's nothing to fix. Um,
I guess I'd be curious to hear from like, you know, Tony, Evram, Charles, like, since you're all coming from like professional backgrounds, right? Um,
mm,
and you all have, I know other beautiful artistic aspects, but in your working life, you are within a professional capacity. And Kevin, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, but just I'd be curious to hear about how this process or sitting with the medicine has potentially helped or you've seen growth in your life. And then, yeah, Kevin, like what potentially is calling you to come and do this work?
I can start, I guess. I think it's increased my capacity for dealing with other people's problems. I think I kind of refer to myself as a heat sink. So the medicine has proven a way for me to kind of shed the stuff that I absorb, some of that coming from the workplace. I think it keeps me from getting spun up like those around me, where they're quicker to fall into problem thinking, and I just don't take the stuff as seriously. So I think it's given me a little bit of a remove and some perspective on um, not a whole lot of what I deal with day to day is, and this sounds kind of callous and maybe cavalier, but it's just really not that important in the scheme of things. So, of course, I don't want to say that to anybody because I have no problem with them being invested the way that they are in their lives and their work, and they take a lot of pride and as they should, and maybe a stronger sense of identity from their work than I do. Um, but I'm just where I would get spun up and wound around the axle a lot more easily in the past. I've just got some distance. It's given me a different perspective on it.
mm.
Beautiful.
And
Thank
Tony,
you.
how about can you speak to like the creative spark? Like how has it sparked your creative engine?
Oh, I thought Scott told me not to talk
No,
about it.
no,
Yeah,
I
now I
wanted
want to
to
hear about
acknowledge.
that part.
I wanted to acknowledge that you
Because I
also
think
have that.
it's just as cool. It's like this makes a difference in our current work, but it also like opens up these other parts of ourselves that are really,
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
I wrote a children's book more than
Yes,
20
you've read
years
it. I
ago.
got it, man. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I just had so much blockage around everything artistic in my life.
Mm.
It was ridiculous. And we had a breakthrough, was in a retreat with Scott. And I think Jason, you may have been there too, and Evram.
Yeah.
I think that may have been when it happened. And after that retreat, I had 3 children's books published within 1 year.
Yeah.
And I've got, now this was earlier, but just getting in touch with music. I've got 2 albums that I've published original music. It just went from 0 to 60 in a very short amount of time, and it's just getting started. That's actually probably the scariest part,
Yeah.
and why I maybe keep feeling the need to dig deeper with the medicine and keep going back, which was going to be one of the questions I was going to ask, is being afraid of that side of me. I've gotten a taste of it, and it feels like it could be a really consuming monster, like in a good way. But there's a divergence from the person that I've been that the medicine has helped chip away at, and there's a level of intentionality of me letting go of some of the identity pieces that I think are setting me up for that. But I feel like there's a bigger chunk to deal with, and it's coming, and I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with that. So keep your bedroom set up, Scott. I might be down there dealing with that. Is it okay if I ask a question now, or do we want to get back
No,
to?
yeah, go ahead, man.
Okay. So I know you've been focusing on people who are new to the experience. My question is more about continuing that experience and maybe being able to articulate something that, and I was writing my question down. It was really funny because I put felt sense, and about 2 seconds later, Scott, you said that phrase. So the idea of continually going down and engaging in ceremony, and you talked about integration, and integration is not something that happens within a retreat, right? I'm still integrating from my first retreat. But how would you, I I've heard people talk about why do you need to go multiple times or continue when you still got things that you're integrating from your first retreat? Why do you keep going back? Are you that messed up? You know, that kind of comment. Right. And I have a felt sense. I think I can have my own articulation of a response, but I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that.
So even in asking that type of a question, I feel there's this implied sense of, so at some point there's a termination, right, to growth. And what I would maybe reframe it in a way that hopefully takes away that charge of like an expected outcome, like an endpoint, is that ultimately, you know, whatever the modality is that a person chooses, whether that's yoga, meditation, working with a therapist, you know, plant medicine, my true hope is that these are modalities in which a person can learn more about themselves, and at some point they have enough tools in their toolkit to self-resource. It's, you know, unless like someone is really committed to this work, you know, like I don't see myself doing anything else from here on out. But as far as a guest coming down to do their own personal work, it's hard to say like, oh, you know, X number of ceremonies and you'll be finished. I can't say that to someone. I've never come across a healer that has actually had a finite number of this is what it will take to get you, you know, to where you want to be. And again, it comes back to what this aspect of control, you know, it's like, well, what is it that the person is actually wanting for themselves? And because this isn't a, you know, ayahuasca or plant medicine isn't a panacea, it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to answer or give that nugget right out of the gate. Oftentimes because there are layers that need to be, you know, gone through. It is, you know, there are aspects, it's really fascinating, like Joseph Campbell's like hero's journey. There are stages and a progression to this work. And in order to get to another layer, as it were, of this work, oftentimes it requires, you know, going through certain steps or, you know, stages of integration or understanding what that process is. So what I guess if your question is like how to respond to people that are asking that type of question, what I would offer back to them is, you know, I don't know if there is a termination for personal growth. Like, you know, there's really maybe asking them, you know, back, like, is there an expectation on their part that, you know, any modality should have some form of sense of completion, right? I know we would like to believe that, but there isn't an illusionary aspect within the fabric of society that whether I achieve a PhD or, you know, I achieve a certain level of expertise in my field, it's unfortunate because it's almost implied like the development and the learning ends at that point. And I feel like that's very, very, very dangerous and detrimental to people because what it does is it, coming back into the theme of plants and, you know, medicine, that is a very static place of being. And actually, everything in life is very dynamic, right? Nature is constantly changing. We, as humans, are constantly changing and, evolving, adjusting based on any given situation. And so to have the idea that at some point this work will be completed, or I won't need to come down for retreats, you know, that's it is maybe something for the other person to look within themselves. What I would caution is that I've seen other people go the other way where they see ayahuasca as, or sitting in ceremony as a cure-all. Like anytime I'm feeling bad, I'm going to go and do a retreat. And again, that's just the other extreme of this spectrum. And so really it comes back to the individual. And what I would offer to each person is like, they have to, in a way, figure that for themselves, right? If I'm working with integrity and I see that someone is maybe leaning more towards anytime there's a problem or a challenge in their life, they're wanting to come and, use ayahuasca as a bandage. I've told people like, this isn't the right time for you. Like sit with the work that is coming up for you. That's where you need to be, and yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Tony, I want to add to that too. Like, I think about it through the lens of, I've thought a lot about this. It's like, it's where we choose from too. It's like, I don't need to do this, but I'm choosing, I want to. And it is, I want to because it is a part of my structure of a bigger plan of my development. It's like my developmental journey is going to continue until I die. And right now, ayahuasca is a modality in my process. It may not be for a few years. It might be for 20 years. I don't know what that's going to be like. Right now, I trust that it is, and like here's how it fits. And I think it's like a better question for all of us to like look at like, well, what is your process? How do you develop? How do you continue to develop and grow and transform as a human? And cool, ayahuasca might not be part of that journey for you. You might have all these other ways of doing it, and that's beautiful. But I think it's like really having a connection to like, yeah, I don't, to the point about PhDs and degrees. It's like, yeah, we get a degree and then we don't ever have to learn about anything again. Let alone we have never started learning about ourselves, which is, a pretty big flaw in our culture. So yeah,
Yeah, I would like to speak to that a little bit as
yeah,
well, because I got that question so many times in my life. I feel that it usually comes from people who haven't sat with the medicine, right? Because if you've sat with it, you kind of know why you would go back for. And then from those who haven't sat, it can come from multiple places. Sometimes it's from cynicism, sometimes it's just being skeptical, and sometimes it's just curiosity, right? They're like really asking, like, why are you going back? And in my experience, I just give this analogy of like, why do you keep going back to the gym, right? You don't go to the gym and just expect muscle growth overnight. So basically, when I say it in that way, they usually, take it, receive it well. But there was this one time actually, it came up in an argument with my sister, and she told me, so like I thought you did ayahuasca and you healed. Like you're still like arguing with me. And it was that this one time that she really didn't like what I said. It was just her being triggered. I was kind of fine in the argument, but um my reaction there was like, I just laughed like inside of me. I'm like, you just don't really know what this is. I never said I healed. I never said I feel healed forever. So like from there, I guess how I handled it over time and not really defending it. Just to like, this is why I keep going back, or like, just getting super defensive about it, convince people in my life that okay, like this is something that she really is getting a lot from, and she keeps going back to these things because growth doesn't end, healing doesn't end. And I also explained it as like it being my oil change, right? Like I come back to the matrix here, like I do have a professional life, and then you can't help but you collect certain energies, and even though I'm way better at dealing with it, it's kind of my like time with myself to go back and keep doing more work and just in a way, and we talk about it with Scott, to like bring that medicine back to the society, and show up in certain ways to share that. I definitely would like to stay there and not come back, but at the same time, I feel like it's needed for a while. I'll keep doing that. And yeah, that's one way I explain it to people, and it actually lands well in my experience.
yeah. And ever that's I love it. Like you've also been like grooving in your professional career. Like how is that? Like you're like you
Oh,
found a whole new line of work. Maybe just
absolutely.
speak to that briefly.
Absolutely. I can actually, I have something really fresh coming up with this because I'm transitioning into a new job. So in the last few weeks, I have experienced certain experiences, right? I'm leaving an organization and joining another one. And I'm just observing what's going on rather than reacting to things because I really could if I guess I hadn't done certain amount of work, I will say, not to say like I'm done with my work, but so I've gotten some response. I've had many people reach out to me because I'm leaving this one job. A lot of people sent positive messages, and I got this bunch of people who gave me an attitude about it because I'm leaving their organization as if they own the company. Like they don't own it. But it's just like they really didn't want to talk to me because I'm now leaving their company. And I could get upset about it. I could take it personal, but I haven't. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry that you can't be happy for me, but I appreciate it. You know, my response to it was way more different than it would have been 5 years ago.
Mm.
Because I remember the first time I even started my journey with the medicine was because I was having a very hard time at my job 5 years ago and I didn't have any direction, any sense of purpose. So that's actually what brought me to the medicine. And since then, I feel like I have gained the ability just observe and not react. And this is a big statement to say, and this is not a dare to the universe, but I feel like there's not much that can upset me anymore. That's how I feel. I'm sure there will be things in my life that come up, but my experience of it has changed in a way that nothing really lingers for even days, many most of the time, like weeks or months. Like but the worst things can be processed in like days, within days, you know. So that's been my experience in my professional life, personal life, and that's something that I'm truly grateful for, and for that reason I will keep going back to the medicine.
Yeah. Heck yeah. That's beautiful. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. Um, yeah, and like the thing going back to the piece around like being healed, I think that's part of the stigma too. It's like, and it's like if you don't sit with the medicine, or it's kind of like if you're on like the outer edges of it, and someone comes back and they come back and they do fucked up things and they're still human, and people are like, look at them, they're still like, what they're saying is like they're still a human, and it's like, yeah, no shit, they are totally still a human and in their process, and it's not like a healed perfection. You know, we walk the world, and I think it's just important to name that because it's like that's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like we're not trying to steal our humanity. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of these ways of being that, people are wanting to move away from because, they aren't in service anymore and very likely causing unnecessary pain and suffering.
Mm.
What is important to understand is that if that way of being, that pattern has been in place for decades,
Mm.
to expect that within a week or a month or even a year it's going to shift, you know is it can,
Mm.
but more often than not it's going to take time because there are going to be interactions or instances where something will come in and act as a trigger to test, really, to test, has that process been maybe let go of, right? To what degree has it been let go of? Where is that person at? And so the triggers or the events that may come after a person has done this retreat that kind of stimulate or irritate, this, it could be anger, frustration, or, whatever patterning that may be, is oftentimes a measure of where am I in my process? Like very much to what Evram said, am I able to no longer linger on it, and ruminate for weeks on end? Like this person said this to me, how dare they? Versus, okay, that was a bit mean,
Mm.
right? But it's not true. That's not me.
Mm.
And there is this evolutionary aspect, that this work is not linear. It's very much, how the vine, ayahuasca vine, expresses in nature. It's kind of has its twists and turns. And coming back to something that I wanted to touch on that Tony had shared is this aspect of um, the fear. It's not uncommon that people start to actually fear, like stepping into their their light, their power, as it were. And I would say that is at times even a bigger fear than the fear of the unknown. Is like, if I were to fully embrace all of my gifts, you know, that is scary, because there's responsibility that comes along with it, right? And accountability.
Yeah. 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 And that's the showing up piece, and like where the work stays, where the medicine stays in that process.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know,
Like
Kevin.
so much of this stuff is like hardwired into our nervous system, and like we can't just think our way out of it. I think that's where the medicine takes you through different. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I want to get this on recording, so I want to ask a question, get your perspective on it. Can you speak a little bit? I've got an upcoming retreat with Wachuma, and some folks might listen to this, and I wanted to have them hear a perspective of like, what that medicine is, how it might be different from ayahuasca. Ayahuasca seems to be a bit more like in the public eye.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe could you just talk to like your experience of the medicine, how they're different? Um,
Yeah. So I'm not, I don't work with Wachuma.
yeah,
I'm not a Wachumero, but I have sat with it a few times. It's a different plant medicine. It's within Peru. There really isn't a fixed or long-standing tradition similar to like the Shipibo or the Mestizo in Peru, or other indigenous groups that work with ayahuasca. Pachuma is a cactus. Often, it's San Pedro is another name that it goes by. And the best way that I can describe the experiences that I've had with it is it's it's a medicine that has a lot of similarities to ayahuasca in that it does open a person up energetically. However, that process is more gradual. So a ceremony can start, typically around 8, in the morning, and it can go until 4 to 5 in the evening, or, early afternoon, depending on the person you're sitting with. There are very similar to ayahuasca. There's a lot of different ways to sit with it. The Huachimeros that I'm familiar with, that are in my community, they typically have people come in early morning. They'll drink the medicine, and typically there's a large space for them to spread out, and it's, I would say, more self-guided. So everyone will find a spot within the space and basically go into their own process. The Huachimero doesn't take on the role, I would say, as a doctor, but as a holder of the medicine. So how each Huachimero that I know, they again really do return agency back to the individual, but they're there for support when needed, but they're not constantly, let's say, with somebody.
yeah,
They'll be moving throughout the space. And whereas within the Shipibo tradition of ayahuasca, when you're in ceremony, the healer is actually, we call them energetic surgeons, right? As a bad analogy. With Huachuma, the beauty of it is it's a really wonderful way for someone to connect to self. Like it is very much, it's described oftentimes as a heart opening medicine. So connecting back into that heart space, right? Of love, of compassion, of forgiveness, seeing aspects, whether that's shadow or just maybe parts of self that are needing to be looked at, but in a way that is nurturing and caring. And the medicine, I would say, because it's a more gradual progression of the effects of the medicine and how it starts to work with a person, it's a bit, I wouldn't say it's softer or it's gentler than ayahuasca.
yeah,
It's just that it works in a way that with that time, things can gradually be engaged with without maybe the intensity.
yeah,
Ayahuasca, like when the effects of the medicine come on, and you're in that process, like you're going to go really, you have to go through it to,
Yeah.
get to the other side of it. And that can be challenging for some people. Some other things that I can share about Huachuma is that from a pharmaceutical restrictive standpoint, Huachuma is a bit more forgiving. However, what I would stress is that it's important if someone is wanting to sit with Huachuma and they are on medications, whether that's antidepressants, any type of SSRIs, that they speak with the Huachumero or the person who's leading the ceremony to see where they sit with those prescriptions. I do know some Huachumeros that are more forgiving around timelines of being off certain medications than others. And so it really depends. But with ayahuasca, I'd say across the board, at least with the people that I know work with this medicine, there are a lot more stricter constraints on taking pharmaceuticals if someone's on medications
Yeah.
prior to coming into this work. Yeah.
Yeah, and just for anyone listening to name specifically what Scott's talking about is contraindications of working with the medicines. Like you can't be on certain prescription meds. They have an interaction that could not be, I don't know what the word is, not good. Um, yeah.
It's
And
Thanks, man.
specifically, Scott. That's an MAOI, right? That's
yes,
the main conflict, right? That just
yeah,
to
yeah,
name that. Yeah.
yeah. Monoamine oxidase inhibitor. Yeah. So anything that would involve blocking off the receptors. Yeah. And then just also like with Huachuma, I do feel maybe for some people who are curious or interested in sitting with plant medicine or maybe feel like this is something that they're looking at to help in their growth or their healing. If they don't feel ayahuasca, they're ready for that type of a process right now. Huachuma can be a good introductory stepping stone. By no means does it mean that someone's going to have a light or a mild ceremony. You can do very deep work with Huachuma. It really comes again back into, is the container safe? Does the person who's holding that space, what is their relationship to that medicine? And if a person is sitting with someone who's very knowledgeable and has a strong relationship to that medicine, whatever container that they create should hopefully create a space for that person to go into their work. What I would advise against with any type of plant medicine is just jumping into it without first doing, one's own research. Like it's really important to know what you're getting into, right? Before really just committing. So with that, there are no guarantees with any healing modality, whether that's with pharmaceutical medication. There are always potential side effects or adverse effects of medications, just as there are potential risks with plant medicines. And so really what I'd like to leave anyone who's interested in or curious about sitting with plant medicine is to sit with it first. Like, is this something that is calling them first and foremost? And what I mean by that is this sense of like almost a pull, this energetic pull, like to be working with whether it's Huachuma or ayahuasca. And then, really check in with the people that you're going to be sitting with.
Yeah. Nice. Thanks, man. Well, I think that's a good place to kind of complete us for tonight. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the discussion, guys.
Yeah, thank you all
Thanks for
very
sharing.
much for joining.
Yeah. I'm going to stop the recording.